Boy, this Night Dive remaster of Wolfenstein 3D 2 sure is fun. I should probably make a video out of this. Oh, hold on. Hello? Oh, hello, Bethesda's PR. Sure, I'd love to make a video on another Night Dive remaster of a classic video game that won't even be announced for another week. What is it this time? Hexen? Heretic? One of those? Wait, it's what? Holy crap, bros, I have been excited to tell you about this one. So about a week ago, I was working on my video for Final Doom, and lo and behold, Bethesda contacts me with a super secret project they wanted me to get an early peek at. Something they codenamed Athena, and I said to myself, oh yeah, Athena, that Quake Champions character that's retconned to be part of Quake 2 and 4, and is actually named off of the default woman player model from Quake 2? Sure, I could only guess what it's gonna be, and to my surprise, not really, it's Quake 2. You'd know that already at this point in the video. What is pacing? It's my favorite Quake game, remastered and given the same treatment that Quake 1 got last year, I think. Complete with updated models and a brand new campaign by our friends over at Machine Games that appropriately fits the word machine into its campaign name. Given the nature of the Strogg, it's a bit more fitting for this game than the other game, and that's primarily what this video is going to be focusing on, but there's a couple other changes to the main game that I want to talk about first. Unlike the Quake 1 remaster, which mostly left the game untouched and gave it a facelift, which is totally fine, Night Dive made some tweaks to Quake 2 to make it probably the definitive Q2 experience. First and foremost, a compass, working very similarly to the waypoint system from BioShock Infinite, where it tells you where to go as well as giving you a track on the floor to follow. It's pretty handy in some of the more confusing levels, but this is also part of our inventory system, which now has been given a proper radial wheel for us to choose from. Yeah, you don't need to press left and right bracket to cycle through your inventory items this time. You can just pull up a radial wheel with Q by default and hover over what you want to use, meaning I actually use a lot of them this time instead of just forgetting I have half of what's there. Weapon swapping feels noticeably faster. Enforcers will charge directly at you while firing their chain guns, and Berserkers have their unused overhead and leaping attacks restored. Combat is a little bit trickier than it was in the original, and so that's probably why they gave us a dedicated tutorial to learn all this in. This is where you'll learn about that new compass feature, as well as being refreshed on some of the more nuanced mechanics of the game. Stuff like how the Hyper Blaster can penetrate these green barriers, which have also been made way more noticeable, and that the player should prioritize medics who, believe it or not, actually resurrect fallen Strogg. Apparently they did this in the original game, and even when I played this game through on Nightmare last year, I never even noticed, which makes me think that they're probably either more aggressive like they were in Ground Zeroes, I think that was the expansion. Do you guys want to see me do a video on those, because I never really played them? Or, more possibly, I just never noticed them picking people up because their particle effect just looked a lot like blood, so it's more likely that I just saw them being picked up and thought, oh wow, that's a lot of enemies. Honestly, all this port is missing is some better mid-air controls and a centered view model, and this would be probably the best Quake full stop. Oh wait, it does have an option for a centered view model, but it just turns the view model off? I'm assuming that's a bug and not how it's intended to work. Hopefully that's fixed down the line, please, thank you. Just about everything I've talked about here is going to be coming up in that new campaign I mentioned before called The Call of the Machine. A 7-level episode which may not sound like much, but these are some massive levels. We're talking upwards of 30 to 40 minutes each, with every level starting you back off from square one with a fresh inventory and just your pistol. This does also mean that they each kind of fall into the same routine where you hold on to your quad damage or even the rare double damage for when you fight the boss at the end of the level just to make them a total cakewalk, but there are a couple of times where there's more than one boss there, which could totally throw you for a loop if this is how you're relying on them. But because of this, you can kind of treat every level as its own mini episode, letting you approach the way that it paces enemies and weapons in a totally different way. I mean, one of them starts you off right from the get-go with a BFG 10,000 blasting down waves of Strogg before you even find your first shotgun. The levels themselves are way more dense than what we saw in the original game, often throwing waves of enemies that would outnumber the amount of Strogg we'd see in a single map in one area. And a lot like Machine Games' campaign for the Quake 1 remaster, a lot of these levels are going to be hitting a balance between looking like they'd fit right in with the original game, and then looking like some wild shit that doesn't even look like it comes from an id Software game, let alone Quake. I mean, one of these levels just straight up made me think of the Aether mod for Minecraft like a decade ago. I blame the use of teal. Our goal here is to retrieve 6 of the Strogs data disks and use that information to help us locate the Strog Maker. Starting off the player in a Quake 1 style hub where they select a level by giving coordinates to the mothership that drop ships all of our troopers down into each of their respective levels. If you want to get really technical, we play as 7 different Marines in this, but you probably wouldn't even care to think about that, I don't blame you. The identity of the Strog Maker is teased to us as early as this 3rd level in, assuming that you're playing all of these left to right, where we drop down into this Quake 1 portal texture, and for a brief moment, a really familiar monster noise can be heard. Did you catch that? Yeah, I did too, and I had to pause my game to get my shit together. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain in just a moment, because this is much more than just an Easter egg. It does become important later on. Also, yeah, we're on the moon. It's got low gravity, and we get the Reckoning's phalanx to fuck around with. Actually, a lot of the expansion's weapons and enemies are here in this campaign, turning it into like this beautiful tribute of everything that made Quake 2 great. Completely unrelated to that, the Iron Maidens aren't anywhere to be seen in Call of the Machine. I couldn't imagine why. Don't worry though, my fellow degenerates, they're still here in the game with updated models and jiggling assets. We don't get all of the expansion weapons here. There's no chainsaw or ion ripper, probably because they get in the way of the balance, so this isn't a hodgepodge of everything Quake 2, you know? Now, if you saw some of that gameplay footage from before when we were talking about the portals and shit, you might think, damn, that arena sure is packed, Mr. Travis Guy, and yeah, it actually really was, and this battle was pretty freaking tough. Part of it is because I'm playing this on Hard Plus, which is available from the get-go rather than being locked behind a console command. It's called Nightmare this time, which source ports like Yamagi and even Quake 2 RTX have adopted. Yeah, it's Yamagi, not Yagami like I previously thought. Oops. But enemies don't really flinch on Nightmare difficulty, which can make these hordes a lot more dangerous when I'm not getting my shit kicked in by the Gate Warden, a new-ish boss that sicks his army of mutants on me when he's getting pretty low on health. Remember that's going to be important for a part way later in the game. Just remember that the Tesla mines can distract him so that you don't get shot by some of his rocket barrages, because those could kill you even at full health, at least here on Nightmare. See, they're mad because their founder just renamed the company into a variable. Yeah, a lot of the bosses here range from either just okay to some of the most bullet-spongy nuisances in all of Quake 2. A great example for both of these is when you have a rematch with Macron on the moon, and then when you kill him, you have to fight the children of Macron, which are just smaller Macrons stuck inside of this rotating room that can make it hard to cheese them with the BFG, though you still totally can. That was fucking awesome. Oh, right, so that Quake 1 portal texture I talked about before could totally be a coincidence, I say trying to intentionally misdirect you, because in each of these 6 levels, there's a hidden portal with a ball-busting trial that'll reward you with some new weapons and inventory items, offering some of the most fun challenges I've experienced in all of Quake 2, which even has a couple of nice throwbacks to some pieces of id Software, history? At least these two do. This one's called McGee Station, and we get another one called the Casali Effect. Even when I delay my Final Doom video, they still sneak up on me. Though not all of them are id Software references, this one's just simply called baklava. Unless Greek food is really important to id Software lore, I think someone at Machine Games was just really hungry when they came up with this. But all of this culminates in the darkest depths. And I'm gonna put a spoiler warning on the screen here because if you're one of the few people who actually cares about Quake lore, then there's some juicy stuff for you here, and you should probably just go play the expansion for yourself. My biggest complaint is because of the sort of level select that this campaign has, you could just stumble into this as your first level, and it'll give you a very interesting impression of how this expansion is supposed to go. I think it's great if you just do this one last. And I'm not just saying that because you could find pictures of the developers' cats in this little secret here. That does help though. But one duel with the Overburden later, and the fruits of the Strog's mining efforts on this remote planet, I'm guessing, starts to come together, with the unmistakable Lovecraftian shub demonetized guarded by some shamblers appearing carved onto some of the doors here, giving us possibly the first explicit connection between Quake 1 and 2 after the last, 17 years? It's not like the connection really mattered up until this point, but I'm hoping that this is a good teaser for a future game. Please, oh please, for the love of God. You could actually see this mural back in the fight with the Overburden, but I totally missed it. And again, just like on the moon, this isn't some one-off Easter egg. Oh my god, it's actually happening. Hey, remember that fight with Chthon at the end of the first episode in Quake? Yeah, this is that, except not as good. I personally blame the lack of air control movement for Bitterman here. Well, no, you're not Bitterman. In fact, the drop pod that dropped this guy off at the beginning of the stage doesn't even have a name on it, and I'm starting to see why. This is the only level that ends with us failing to retrieve the Strog CD and our Marine here being lost in the madness of Quake. And hey, if you're upset at all that we didn't really get a chance to fight any proper shamblers, don't worry, their time's coming. With 5 of the data discs pinpointing the location of the Strog Maker, we're actually sent into more of Shub's ruins, pitting us against 2 of her masters of the machine, which turn out to be nothing but 2 shamblers that are juiced up and can still be cheesed with the constant baiting into a melee attack. But just like the motherfucker who guarded the moon before him, they start spawning another army of mutants when each of these shamblers is at low health. These shamblers are the final bosses of this campaign though, sadly. And once they're killed, we're just given a real basic thank you for playing little piece of dialogue. But hey, you know, I'll take it. Even ignoring the Quake 1 pandering, this is still Quake 2 at its best. And I mean, think of the implications, assuming that they actually make a full, you know, Doom 2016 style reboot for the Quake series. Is this implying that the Quake 1 Quake created the Strog, or did the Strog simply unearth this sort of new demonic force that's now taking their reins? Does this retcon of lore still apply to the Quake 4 Strog, or are we in like a split timeline now where Quake 4 never happened? Only time's gonna tell, and I hope that time tells us soon. I mean, just think about it. After Doom Eternal, The Ancient Gods Part 2, hell is gone. There's a huge vacuum there. It's the perfect spot. Just please, id Software, give me this game. I've been so good.